Hello friends, today we are going to see what is the concept of supply under GST. Friends, out of curiosity, someday I asked one person, what is a milkshake? The answer given to me was mixing of milk, fruit, sugar, essence gives you a milkshake. I told fine. You told me what needs to be mixed to get a milkshake, but what I have asked is the definition of milkshake. Can you give that? He couldn't. So my question for you is it possible to define milkshake? Because we have definitions of everything in this world. Then I am asking simply that what is the definition of milkshake? Can it be defined other than the way the person defined me? The answer is no. Why no? Some things can be organically derived, found, like milk. It can be naturally found, organically found. The same way mango, naturally found. But milkshake cannot be naturally found. It has to go through various processes, various man-made processes, various man-made mixing to get a new thing which is called milkshake. So it is not naturally available. Some man-made activity needs to be done on it to get a milkshake. The same thing is with GST. How? Let's understand. Before 1st July 2017, that is before the introduction of GST, various types of commercial transactions took place. Various types of commercial transactions were happening day in, day out. Do you think from the introduction of GST, all these type of commercial transactions changed? Did people change the way they were doing transactions? No. Before GST, people were buying goods. After GST, people are buying goods. Before GST, people were giving services. After GST, people are giving services. So everything is same. There is no change whatsoever in the way the people transacted with each other. So what has changed after GST? Nothing. The way of transaction, the way of all commercial transactions are the same. So, as all these transactions are same, but after the introduction of GST, you have mixed up everything to get a new term known as supply. So supply has no definition per se. Even when you refer section 7, they have given the heading scope of supply, not definition of supply. Supply has not been defined. It has been aggregated. It has been defined as aggregation of various things. Just like milkshake. Just like various things are mixed to get a milkshake, various type of commercial transaction are mixed to get a term supply. So addition of everything that was earlier has been mixed up to get a new term supply. Now, for us, the way milkshake is the same is supply, mixing of various things. Now we will understand, was there any need of this term supply? Was there any need? Let's understand that. In the erstwhile laws, on manufacturing there was excise, on sale there was VAT, and on services there was service tax. So all the laws had their trigger point or benchmark to apply that law. In fact, every law has their benchmark or trigger point so that you can say that a law is applied. The same way, GST should also have its trigger point so that you can say a GST is levied. So that trigger point that was needed in GST law is nothing but supply. Supply is the trigger point of GST, and that is nothing but mixing up of all transactions, type of transactions into one, that is supply. So like all tax merged into one, all taxable events also merge into one, or you can also say all trigger points of erstwhile laws also merge into one to create a single taxable event. So supply is a taxable event of GST. Now coming to the meaning of supply, which all say, which I prefer to say, that is the scope of supply, and that is being also headlined by section 7, that it is the scope of supply. It is not a definition of supply. So when we refer to the scope of supply, the definition starts that with the expression supply includes, a very important term, includes. It is an inclusive definition. It has been illustrative list. There is no exhaustive definition that it has been defined in a box. It has only been defined in an inclusive manner, that supply includes. So whatever has been given in the scope of supply is only an illustrative list, and there can also be more than that that can be covered under supply, and that can also be recommended or added by government in future also. So whatever we see supply is not a fulfilled or full-fledged definition, but only an inclusive definition. And that inclusive definition reads as under, I will read out the exact words. All forms of supply of goods or services or both. Pre-GST we had goods, we had services. Naturally one law is there now, so everything is merged. So all type of goods or services or both. There can be even goods, only services, only goods, or both goods and services, a combo. So any type of, all forms of supply. But we are understanding what is supply, and you have wrote what is all forms of supply. I only don't know what is supply. So they have then given in detail that all forms of supply, such as, examples are given. I already told the definition started with includes. So all examples are given and not a full-fledged definition, but majorly it covers everything. So all forms of supply, such as, first is sale. What is sale? Sale is right to use and title. You give away the goods, the possession also goes, the ownership also goes. Second is transfer. Transfer is different from sale. In transfer, only right to use is given. Right of ownership remains with the owner. Barter. Barter, give and take. You give me pen, I give you pencil, that is barter. That barter is also covered under supply. So normally barter doesn't have any monetary consideration. Still barter is under the definition of supply. So barter is also supply. Next is exchange. I buy a new phone against exchange of my old phone by getting some reduced price, and that is nothing but an exchange. That is exchange. So buying of a new phone against my old phone is also that value of my old phone that gets reduced by buying a new phone is also included to be included in supply, and that includes in supply. License. What is license? License is right to operate. Whenever I give a right to operate something, that is license. Rental, lease. I will take both these together. Many persons use these in the same manner, or they alternatively use it. But there is a slight difference between that. Rental is normally for a shorter duration, and lease is normally for a longer duration. Rental provides less rights compared to lease, because lease is for a longer period. So rights given to tenant is also much larger in scope. So lease or renter is also covered under supply. Next is disposal. whenever you dispose out something, scrap you can say, that is also covered under supply. The definition now goes like this: made or agreed to be made. Not necessary that you have done this, even you have agreed to do this in future, that also covers under supply. Of course, there is time of supply that will decide when that time will be decided, but for now, if you have also agreed to do a supply, that is also covered under supply. Next, for a consideration by a person, for a consideration, there should be in exchange you have done all or any kind of this supply. There should be any consideration against that. Consideration can be monetary or non-monetary, but a consideration is most important. If there is no consideration, there is no supply. As of now, if there is no consideration, there is no supply. So consideration is necessary by a person in the course or furtherance of a business. Now, what is the course or furtherance of a business? Say for example, I am supplying box. Now my normal trading or my normal activity is supplying box. But while making that boxes, there are also scrap of papers that gets generated. When I sell that scrap, is that a supply? See, my normal business activity is of box. I manufacture and supply box, but scrap is not my business activity, but that gets produced when I manufacture box. So though it is not my business normal activity, but still it should be considered as a business activity, because it is not though in the course of business, but that is in the furtherance of business. It is related to my business. Okay, I will give you one more example for furtherance of business. If I am selling box, am I prohibited to sell pen or pencil or paper? No, I can do anything what I want. No one is forcing me to not to do any business. So that is also furtherance of business. I can do any type of business. So that can be a furtherance of business. One more example will make you clear. A household person goes to a shop to sell his old utensils. Now whether this is business? No. That is not in the course or his furtherance of business, because that is only being sold for his personal use and not intended to do a business. So it can be a course or furtherance of business. That is the 7.1a. Now what is 7.1b? Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Very interesting. I'm getting bored going online and downloading some movie to watch by paying some amount. So I'm importing service for a consideration because I'm paying something, whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. That is not my business of downloading movie and watching, but still that will be covered under supply. Import of service for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. So you will think, oh, then if I watch anything online and pay for it, I have to get registered for GST. No, relax, that will be covered under exemption thing. But as of now, you understand that import of service with a consideration, whether or not for a business, is also included in supply. And last thing, whatever is covered in Schedule 1 is supply. Whatever is covered under Schedule 1 is a supply. Now, as we are lacking of time, I am not going into detail for Schedule 1. But the supply definition is not over. The scope of supply is not over yet. What it further says, but it is not relevant. I'll just tell you in very short thing. There are 3 schedules: Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3. Till now we have only covered Schedule 1. That is whatever is covered under Schedule 1 is supply. There is Schedule 3. which tells whatever is described here is not a supply. Whether or not in the course of furtherance of business or anything, whether a consideration or not, anything that is not a supply. Now what is Schedule 2? In Schedule 2, government has listed out various type of transactions, activities that should be considered as a supply of goods or supply of services. That is, whatever the litigations, whatever the issues that were there in the erstwhile laws, that whether this is supply of goods or supply of services, has been cleared out, has been defined in Schedule 2. That okay, say for example a restaurant service, that is a supply of service now, nothing more. Don't go into detail. Restaurant services, that is a supply of service. So in that way they have described various type of activities which are to be now treated as either supply of goods or supply of services as mentioned. So in a nutshell, and yes, there is a section 7173 also with reserve in which government reserves the power that by way of notification we can define any activity as a goods or a supply or a services, that is a supply of goods or supply of services. So in a nutshell, if I tell what is a supply, supply is, I will tell that supply is one type of formula. Supply equals to supply as defined as sale, barters, transfer and anything, that is 71A. So the supply is sale, barter, exchange, rental, everything mentioned there, plus Schedule 1, because Schedule 1 says that whether or not you receive consideration or not, it is a supply. So there are number of items which has been mentioned in Schedule 1. Whether or not for a consideration, you have to consider it as supply. So plus Schedule 1 and minus Schedule 3, because Schedule 3 says whatever mentioned here, no supply. So supply equals to sale, barter, exchange, rental, water is mentioned in 71A plus Schedule 1 minus Schedule 3. That is in a nutshell supply. Thank you.